All right, so have you ever had a brand new idea, maybe to create a new thing or start a business or this new project or a new group? And, at the beginning you had all this excitement and you were ready to go and do your thing, but then at some point you got stuck because you didn't feel like you had everything you needed to get started. Maybe you felt like you were missing the latest camera equipment or a new, canvas and paintbrush set, or maybe the latest studio microphone, or maybe a degree or a class on how to get started. And just like, man, like if you only had this one thing or these two things or these 15,000 things, you think, man, if I just had that, I could finally do my thing. Well, I'm here to tell you that you're not alone. And honestly, the hard truth is that resources are great and they're good, but you don't need everything to get started. So today I'm going to share my tips for embracing your limitations and using what you've already got in your hands to make an impact with your art. It's not as hard as you think. Let's get into it.
Get up, get crazy, let loose, set yourself free.
All right. Welcome back to the GodFrame Show, the podcast where we tell stories and life lessons that help you get unstuck and back to creating the art that moves the world. I'm your host, GodFrame, and I am so glad that you decided to spend some time with me. Whether you're listening to this on your commute or at the gym, or you're watching it on YouTube, or laying down in your bed, you're supposed to be asleep. I don't know when or where you're listening to it, but I'm glad you're here. All right. Welcome. Whether this is your first episode or you've been rocking with me ever since the beginning, I appreciate you. A quick story about me. I grew up in the country, all right, in the boonies. Not like super, super, super boony, but like boony enough to where reception got funky sometimes and Wi-Fi or lack thereof was a real thing, all right? And growing up in the country, we got bored really quickly, really easily. But the good thing about my family, and this, I still appreciate this about them till this day, is that our family taught us how to make our own fun, to make our own games. My nana, my mom, my aunties, they were always like, yo, go outside. We'd be like, no, it's hot. Like, we're bored. Like, no, go outside and play. And we'd have to play outside all day long. And we didn't have a whole lot. And so we would just make up stuff, mostly dangerous things. But we got through it. And I'll never forget, we didn't make this game up, but my parents and our aunts and uncles taught us this game. It was called Jump Board. Maybe you've heard of it. I don't know. If you're from Batesville, Arkansas, you probably have heard of it. Here's how Jump Board worked. You would get one piece of, I guess you would call it plywood. I don't know. I'm not a construction person, but you get this board, right? Like a 2x4. And somehow, I don't know, every time we wanted to play Jump Board, like a board would just appear. Thinking back, I don't know where these boards came from. I don't know who was out here doing random construction out here in the middle of Rutto Hill in the woods. But we always managed to find some sort of board for the Jump Board game. So you'd get a board and then you'd get one giant rock. All right. And it had to be just the right shape, right? Not too round, not too square, not too tall, not too short, just kind of right there, almost at like shin height. All right. And so you get a board, you get a giant rock, and you'd get two crazy kids who were willing to break their necks. And what we would do is we'd lay the board on top of the rock, sort of like a seesaw, right? And one person would stand on one end at the bottom, and the other kid would run up, jump as high as you can, and like jump down on the other end of the board. And at the same time, the person who was on the ground would have to jump up. And if you timed it just right, well, first of all, if you timed it wrong, you pretty much cracked the board in half and the game was over because you have two people just smashing down on this board. But if you did it correctly, if you timed it just right, it was like this Cirque du Soleil, standing giant teeter-totter seesaw game. And it was hecka dangerous, but it was so much fun. And there wasn't much to it, but we had a blast playing that game. And I bet you if we'd had some fancy gym or some fancy jungle gym, like it might not have even been half as fun. But it was great because we were using what we had to entertain ourselves. And so the big idea I wanted to bring you today is that, if you let them, limitations can actually breed creativity. It can actually foster a more thriving, creative life. And sometimes, having all the resources under the sun is not the greatest thing. Sometimes having less to work with is the key to creating something magical. When you think about our world, it's full of resources. It's full of, technology and tools and opportunities. And there's so many things at our fingertips literally nowadays. And I love it. It is great. It is so phenomenal. I'm so thankful and I feel blessed to get to grow up and live and even be an adult in this era right now. But the sad truth is things like social media, comparing our lives to other people, it can make you feel like you don't have everything you need and that someone else is ahead of you because they have more at their disposal to create with. And you start to believe the lies that you'll be more powerful if you had all the things, all the tools, all the resources, all the money, all the opportunities, all the, network and the connections. And, you start to believe these lies that you're not doing anything significant or that you're not able to do anything significant without those things. But I would argue that you're actually more powerful if you learn to embrace those limitations and start to use the things that you actually do have. Here's the first way that limitations can foster greater creativity. Is that, these limitations test your ingenuity. Having limitations tests your ingenuity. Here's the thing. It's really easy to go through the motions in life, right? And just kind of float through it and do your own thing. And, when things are working well, you can almost go on autopilot, right? Like your tools are working the way they're supposed to. People are acting the way they're supposed to act. The technology is doing what it's supposed to do. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. I kind of got it easy. I can do my thing. But what happens when things go wonky? What happens when the tool or the resource that you once had isn't working? Or the door that was open to you is now closed? Or, the piece of equipment or the thing that you had that just helps you do your thing in the best way is not functioning properly, and now you no longer have it. What do? I love the Broadway musical Wicked. Wicked the musical is like my junk, right? It is my jam. I love it. If I could watch it every week, I probably would. Absolutely love the story. And occasionally I will look at bootleg snippets of some of the performances because I'm just obsessed with this show. So sometimes I'll get on YouTube and I will, just kind of look at some of the performances of the songs. And on one particular video I found not too long ago, the power went out right before the show started. And so they came on the announcement speaker and they were like, hey, we apologize, ladies and gentlemen. We're trying our best to get the power back on. We'll be back with you shortly. So then 10 minutes goes by, 20 minutes goes by, 30, and then 40. And then it's just like this long extended period of time. And of course, people are getting restless in their seats because they've paid this good money to come watch this musical. And, they've probably traveled. If, they're watching it on Broadway, they've probably traveled from afar to come see this thing. So people are pissed. And at some point you hear an announcement come on and they're like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, we apologize. If you want a refund, we're happy to give you one. So you can, head to the box office and we'll give you a ticket for another show. Or if you'd like to stick around, we're actually going to do a stripped down acoustic performance of the songs from the show. Right. And so if you know anything about the show Wicked and pretty much any Broadway musical, there's a lot of lighting and special effects and smoke and, there's all sorts of crazy stuff that happens that relies on technology and power to make the magic happen. And so if you don't have those things, if you don't have power, you pretty much are just left with voices and acoustic instruments. And so instead of giving up, instead of, throwing in the towel and being like, oh, we're not going to be able to perform tonight, they had the ingenuity to say, you know what? Let's give our audience an intimate, one-of-a-kind, special experience that they're going to be talking about for years to come. And people are still talking about it as one of the best, most powerful, intimate, special performances of the Broadway musical Wicked. And I just love that story because, you know, you can even see it on the video. Like they've got all the lights down, and I think they had like some flashlights or something. Like they used a few flashlights that people had, and they like pointed them at the actors, and they would come up on the stage, and they didn't have any microphones, so everybody had to be totally silent in the auditorium. And these actors and actresses were singing their hearts out, and you could barely hear it on the video, but you could hear just the emotion in their voices and just the intimacy. And it just inspired me because it made me think like, man, if you're facing a limitation today, I want you to ask yourself, instead of throwing in the towel and saying, oh, okay, it's a wash, it's not going to work, like, how can you flip it? How can you use your ingenuity to maybe make something that looked like it was going to be a failure, flip that around and say, you know what, we're going to make it this instead. Limitations show your ingenuity. You know, think about what tool or resource you do have at your disposal, and how you can still make something magical. All right, so the second reason that limitations can breed greater creativity is that limitations keep you from getting overwhelmed with too many choices. I don't know about you, but when I go to a restaurant, even if it's a fast food place, I do not like picking from a menu that has too many options. Like, it makes me crazy, like legit. And it takes me forever to pick what I want. You got like 3 pages. I don't remember what restaurant was in, but there was one when we lived in Atlanta, several chains of restaurants, each with like different types of cuisine. And every time you go there, like each one of these restaurants, it never failed. It was like part of their brand. They would have like 6-7 page menu, and it wasn't like small pages. It was like huge pages, and they would just have option after option after option. Do you want it with cheese? Do you want it not with cheese? Do you want it with 3 cheeses? Do you want it with mozzarella? I'm like, yo, I just want it. I don't even want the cheese. Like, there's just too many options. I like simplicity. Our brains like simplicity, I think. I can't back that up with science right now, but when you're trying to create a thing or make something special, the more you can limit your choices, the more you're able to create something memorable. Psychologists call this the paradox of choice, where, having too many choices and too many decisions to make can make us anxious. It can even make us paralyzed. You hear the term analysis paralysis. Worrying that we're going to make the wrong choice, so we end up doing nothing. And so our limitations give us an opportunity to have less stress and make it easier for us to make decisions. So that's the second way that limitations can breed greater creativity, is it prevents you from being overwhelmed with too many choices. All right, I got one more point, but before we do, I want to take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsors. All right, I'll be right back.
This podcast is brought to you by Lamar Haley Entertainment, helping global brands and creators leverage music, film and TV, and digital content to engage audiences on a human level. Discover more at lamarhaley.com.
Being a creator isn't easy. Whether you're juggling last-minute deadlines, working with difficult clients or team members, or you're just not feeling confident in the things you create, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, frustrated, like no one understands what you're going through. Well, here at Team GodFrame, we got you. That's why we created the GodFrame mailing list, a weekly-ish newsletter full of stories, tips, and inspiration to help you thrive on your creative journey, so you can get back to making art that moves the world. Get that creative boost you've been waiting for, from GodFrame straight to your inbox. Sign up now at godframe.com/mailing-list.
Got a question you want to get answered on the show? Or you just want to give a shout out? Now you can. With the Anchor platform, you can record a personalized voice message for a chance to be featured on an upcoming episode of The GodFrame Show. Leave a message now at godframe.com/podcast.
All right, welcome back. We're talking about how limitations can actually breed greater creativity in your creative career. And so I want to bring another point to the table, and it's that limitations expose your true grit. This is a mindset and attitude type of thing. It's where you discover, like, do you really have what it takes to do what you're wanting to do? Do you really have the oomph? Do you really have the guts to go for it, even when you don't have everything you think you need? Or can you only produce when you have everything at your disposal, right? I'll tell you a story about my music career. When I first started, my first beats were on pots and pans when I was, 2 years old, sitting in my grandma's kitchen. And from there, I progressed to, learning to play the keyboard in church, and, eventually got my hands on this video game called MTV Music Generator on PlayStation. Didn't have a studio, didn't have fancy microphones, no equipment, but just like, okay, I got a PlayStation. Oh, what's this game? And I learned that this video game was actually a music creation video game. It was a digital audio workstation inside of a game. Like, whoever made this was a genius. And you could literally make beats the same way I do now in the studio. You could do them with your PlayStation controller on your TV. And it was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And, it wasn't until I was like middle school that, we got our first computer in our house. Dial-up internet, no Wi-Fi. It was one of those as seen on TV computers. It was huge. Like, the monitor was like, God, it was like so big. It was just ginormous. And I didn't have a whole lot of equipment to go with it. I'm like, man, I want to make music. I want to make beats. Like, how do I make this thing work? And it came with this little microphone headset for chatting live. I don't know if y'all remember chat rooms, but you could chat with people depending on what program you were using. And it had like this little goofy looking, microphone that stuck out from the ear all the way to your mouth with this big old foam ball at the end. And I would use that and like play the beat. Like, I would make beats on my PlayStation on the TV next to my computer in the living room, make a beat, take that little microphone and hold it up to the speaker on my TV, play the beat out loud, hit record on my computer and like record the beat into the computer just out loud from the TV speaker. And then get that into my, this whatever free recording software I found at the time, and like rap over that beat using that little, chat microphone. And it was the crummiest sounding music you've ever heard. Like, the mix was trash, but I was making music. I didn't care. Later, I upgraded though to a karaoke microphone that I found at Fred's Dollar Store. We literally probably paid like $2 for that microphone, but it was dope because I could connect it directly to the computer, and it was handheld. So that was my upgrade, if you will. But even then, it was like, man, I didn't have access to a fancy recording studio, but I used what I had at the time, and I was faithful. And I'm pretty much the type of dude who I'll use a thing until the wheels fall off of that thing. Like, I will use it until it literally catches on fire. Like, I will murk a resource, all right, until I can't use it no more. But what that taught me was that I had the grit to use whatever I had in my hands to further my career. And now, fast forward to today, as my music career has progressed, I've released albums of my own, on Apple Music and Spotify, etc. I've been able to produce music for other artists, and I've had my music heard on the NFL Network and BET and VH1 and more, like all these other places. And it just taught me that with a little ingenuity and some can-do attitude, you can really make a lot with a little bit. So, as I close, as the preachers would say, as I close today, I want to encourage you to stop waiting. If you've been on the sidelines waiting to do your thing because you're waiting for the right equipment, or you're waiting on the stars to align, or you're waiting for, the perfect scenario, or like, you're going to be waiting forever. You're never going to have every single thing that you think you need when you're getting started with your creative career. And so I'm not saying go out there and do your stuff half-baked, like don't make nothing mediocre, but I'm saying show what God can do with what you already have. and you'll blow your mind and everyone else's around you. All right, so my challenge as we wrap up this episode, the challenge today is the Creative Limit Challenge, all right? I want you to make something, anything, doesn't matter what it is, something that you normally do, and I want you to put some kind of limit on yourself. So either put a time limit on yourself, so if it normally takes you 2 days to do a thing, give yourself an hour, like just a crazy limitation, right? Limit your tools maybe. So let's say if you're a music producer like me, maybe instead of using 15 sounds, limit yourself to 4, only 4 sounds. Or maybe, you know, if you're a visual artist and you're a painter or a drawer or whatever, instead of using, you know, the whole spectrum of colors in the rainbow, limit yourself to just 3 colors or maybe just 2 colors. Or money, like if you're accustomed to buying, you know, a certain type of tool to get your thing done, like don't buy that thing. Or maybe buy the cheap, crazy, inexpensive, like Dollar Tree version of it and see what you can make with what you have. And I want to know how it goes. Hit me up on GodFrame.com. You know, if you want to contact me there or on social media, I'm at GodFrame everywhere. So I really want to know how this goes. I'm really curious to see what you're able to make by putting these limitations on yourself. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. This is the GodFrame Show. My name is GodFrame, your host, and it has been an absolute honor to talk to you today. All right, I hope you have a phenomenal rest of your day, rest of your week, rest of your life. And as always, I'll talk to you soon. Peace.
Get up!